We speak our words, we listen.
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 Short Introductions to is an autistic radio production for autisticradio.com. We speak our words, we listen. Today we're speaking with Nath, and Nath has a varied career in autism and speaking out for us. How would you describe yourself, Nath? A musician or an advocate?
I describe myself as an autism advocate, but I do have some flair for music as well, yes. I still enjoy making a difference to people's lives, if that makes sense.
How do you do that? What is advocacy in your head?
Well, ever since winning Best Musician Award at the National Eisteddfod in 2014, I realised that what I really wanted to do was to make a difference to people's lives. So I started appearing in the Welsh media a lot and just discussing autism and how it can affect people in different ways. And in recent years, I'm just really passionate about trying to get the word out there that, it's not a weakness and people just need to get more education and, be more inclusive.
That's really interesting. So you see advocacy as a way, as putting a positive message out there to overcome some of the negatives. Is that right?
Yes, because, I've been a victim of hate crime all my life and, just being hated for not being like other people, not sharing the same, interests or doing things differently. That just needs to be appreciated by the wider community, and it's not fair that you should sing the same mainstream songs, if there is such a word as mainstream, in order to become successful. And also, I don't think it's fair that people like Anthony Hopkins, Dan Aykroyd, Susan Boyle, etc. should get their diagnoses and then move on with their careers, because where does that leave the rest of us who want to be like them?
Okay. So you feel a little bit let down and disappointed by some of the people in the public eye?
Yes, I feel let down myself, but I also feel for other individuals who probably feel let down as well.
I'm wondering whether those people don't feel it necessary to make autism the main focus of their lives because they have such a big other life. Do you see where I'm going with that?
Yes, I understand. I'm not saying that, they have to make a fuss. I think it's important to make a fuss just because, for instance, why did Justin Fletcher introduce Makaton to children's programs? Since that time, I think that Makaton and BSL has been made much more of a fuss of, and I think it just makes individuals feel more included and equal. And I just think, we need to make more of a fuss of not just autism, but other conditions and disabilities like motor neuron and Down syndrome, so that everyone will feel more equal.
Okay, so I see what you're saying. What you're saying is it seems like a waste when somebody has a platform that they're not using it to describe one aspect of themselves, and in this case autism or some other hidden disability.
The wider community shouldn't assume that just because someone has autism, the minute they say they have autism, that it's an Achilles heel and that it just, stops them from doing certain things, because that's not the case at all. What they're probably doing, the autistic people that is just going into detail because they're trying to please people, and the wider public need to acknowledge that going into detail is a symptom. So, I think, if they would just acknowledge that and not jump to conclusions so quickly, then autistic people would feel more equal and they would feel reassured that, people actually understand them.
It's about understanding from your point of view.
Yes, it's about understanding and education.
helping people to know a little bit about autism that's different from what they've previously heard.
It's no different to someone like Warwick Davis, who has dwarfism, or Kerry Burnell, who was born with one elbow. You know, how are they any different? They're not. They're just people like the rest of us.
Is the message here not that people shouldn't be defined by their disability, if we use the word disability?
No, people should just be accepted for who they are.
What is it that an advocate like yourself can do to bring that about?
Well, I'm still raising awareness and, standing up for those in need. And where music's concerned, an original tune of mine has pretty much gone viral. I think it's made a difference to people in, certain communities. In the long run, I think we need to be more politically assertive.
Politically assertive, what, through
Yes.
your MP or?
Yes, but not just through my MP, through everyone's MP.
I don't think there's anybody that's going to disagree with you about that. I think most people will certainly put their words to what you're saying. Whether their actions meet up or not is usually the problem, isn't it?
Yes, it can be, especially when it comes to, no offence, the media, because if you go on a chat show or if you're being interviewed for a television program, when they do the editorials afterwards, sometimes they can make it look like they want the audience to feel sorry for you as an individual when that's not what you wanted yourself.
Okay, so when you've been speaking to the media in the past, you felt as though you're handing them the raw you, and then they make something out of it themselves for their own agenda. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I have been specifically interviewed on one occasion for a program, in which I was discussing my symptoms and my history and all that. And that's all I was willing to do, really, just explain my story and how I was struggling to find work and all that. But little did I know that when they would edit it afterwards to bring it all together, well, I guess the result was just a bonus in a way, because, when you improvise, you don't know what the outcome's going to be, if that makes sense.
So were you happy with the result?
I wasn't happy with the results because I didn't want the audience to feel sorry for me. I just wanted them to see me for who I am. But at the same time, the way I see it, everything has its pros and cons. Because even though I was presented in a certain way, I guess there was some element of education to that as well for the wider public.
So you feel as though there was a positive from it, but it wasn't exactly what you wished to get across?
No, not really. I'm glad I got the things across that I got across because it was important. But I suppose what I wasn't happy with was the overall format and layout, in the result, in the end process.
Well, obviously this is interesting to me because I'm the person that's going to edit what you say.
Mm-hmm.
And we're having quite a long conversation today, less than half of which will make the actual edit.
Sure.
So what is it that I should do to ensure that you come across authentically?
I just want to make it clear to the whole world that, autism is just autism. It doesn't tell you everything about an individual. It's just a small element about them, just a small bit of detail about an individual. It doesn't give you the wider picture. It doesn't even matter which country you're from. I like it when I meet people from different countries because I just think that's what gives beauty to the world. And also, everyone in general, no matter where you're from or what condition or disability you have, thinks differently anyway. And you know what they say, two heads are better than one. So, there's no reason why we can't appreciate each other for that reason.
Well, that's a rather beautiful thought there.
Yeah, in other words, everyone's equal.
In general, society doesn't try to work towards equality, though. Most of our structures are set up in a kind of competition way. So there are always pulls in different directions.
In the community and in society, I think it depends on the kind of jobs they do and, the kind of lives they live. Because if you're trying to find a certain job and you don't succeed, then it could be because the market out there is immensely competitive.
Work towards employment there, and as an autistic person, is that something that is at the top of your head, being included through employment?
It's good to be in employment because it's good for your mental health and it's good to earn a living and learn independent skills and all that. And I know that not everyone finds it easy to do that, but there's always support out there, I find. So
you have a positive message there. You're saying that if you are autistic and you feel as though you are being discriminated against, then there might be services out there if you look for them.
There should be, and I mean, I work for one of those services anyhow.
What is that service that you work with?
Autistic Minds.
Oh, okay. I've come across that recently with possibly a colleague of yours.
It was that colleague that encouraged me to get in touch with you, because he knew just how passionate I am about advocacy.
When you take advocacy as a word, what do you do with that?
Well, if I see someone in the street, for instance, who's struggling with something, I tend not to judge them, even if what they're doing should be, elementary or something that almost anyone can do, because by the end of the day, everyone has something that they struggle with, even those of us who don't have autism.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that you're saying that it's all of these tiny micro things that you can do in your life that make other people's lives better, and that's a form of advocacy. However small it is, it matters.
Yes, and also I'm one for the golden rule, do unto others as you'd have done unto you. And seeing as how I don't like being judged or, scoffed at, I don't do it to other people. And also, if you help others, they'll help you by the end of the day.
A bit like pay it forward then, if you start off with a positive attitude, then hopefully positive attitudes come towards you.
Ideally, yes. I say ideally because you never actually know an individual unless you can step into their shoes, or if you just get to know them, because, trying to befriend a stranger is quite an unpredictable thing.
Just listening to your individual approach about advocacy, your individual thoughts on the autistic experience, the human experience, helping others, it's something that I try to do in different ways. The things that I do is through voluntary organisations aren't kind of autistic specific, but it's involved in things like housing issues and community issues and looking to help to make things at least a little better.
Definitely.
To hear something that's autism specific. So saying that, I do that through the Autistic Radio, come to think of it. But what I like about your approach is it's very positive. It's non-judgmental.
Mm-hmm.
And you're given a varied... Basically, you're talking about the human aspect rather than the autism itself or diagnosis or identity even. You're talking about the idea of being human and being nice and not judgmental to anybody, which is a very good thing.
We're just people by the end of the day, and it doesn't matter what kind of jobs you have, police or, train drivers or working in a factory, we're all just people. And I've befriended a few police officers in my time. I've even done some work for the police. That's how my awareness raising career began, actually. I provided a training DVD to them. But what I like about befriending police officers or even talking to them is that there's an equilibrium. The goods, the pro is that you feel like you're doing the right thing, and you're not doing anything out of the ordinary or anything unpleasant. But there are cons to everything as well, and in this case, I would say you can also find it apprehensive because you never know if you might say something offensive in a minute or something like that. Basically, the conversation with police can be pleasant, but it can be unpredictable, just like with anything, really, I know. But the last thing you want to do is to, offend anyone in any way.
It's a kind of minefield in a way, because I've done it. When I was younger, I was very opinionated. I still am now, but basically I was very raw, and I would say things without intending to offend, but just giving my views, especially just after I was diagnosed, and I thought it gave me license to be brutally honest. And I said a few things, not intentionally to offend, but
just didn't quite come out right, did it?
It didn't come out right, but basically, I used to go to all these sort of social groups, and I would blurt out things, and basically thinking out loud, and it wouldn't go down very well.
Yeah.
And there'd be certain things I'd react to, but what I've learned from the past to now is you've got to understand when you're around people is, be very careful. Try not to be judgmental. Try only give an opinion if it's asked for. And just basically, be as gentle as possible, because people are people, as you say, and I certainly wouldn't want to be offended by anybody what somebody else says. You know what I mean? So it's to be fair as much as possible as well.
Yeah, well, I think if you had counselling sessions, one thing they might say to you there is that what you think is one thing, but what matters is what you actually do and what you actually say out loud. And I mean, I have strong opinions about things, and I do find certain things, in my environment strange, but I do tend to keep my feelings to myself as best I can, because I think that's just the best thing to do sometimes.
Yeah, I agree. I'm easily irritated by things like adverts and things like that. And I can remember I used to always go in these kind of, mini rants, I should say. And then people would say, look, you don't need to go on a rant. You can think what you think, but you don't need to tell everybody what you're thinking. Not that I'm doing anything to present any harm as such. It's just like, you're giving this commentary that no one's asked for.
It's fun. It's interesting you should mention that, Harry, because I've been in environments in which all the participants are autistic, and the door at one point was creaking non-stop. People kept coming out and going in all the time of the conference room, and one person exclaimed out loud with, very bad language, and it upset someone, and that someone asked if she could sit with me, and she was crying because, the bad language had set her off, and I was trying to comfort her. And, I could understand why that person who shouted was irritated, but what that person needs to understand is they are not the only sensitive individuals in the room. Everyone's probably getting irritated by the creak of that door, but, you just need to understand that we're all in the same boat and not try to, let your temper get the better of you by the end of the day, because that's not how you support other people around you.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Especially if you're around people that are kind of, with the sensitivity is absolutely, I totally agree with that, because of the creaking door and things like that. I can totally relate to how frustrating and irritating it can be, because the sensitivity of noise and sights, smells, does affect us in many ways. But people deal with it different ways.
Definitely.
But it's all about learning as well. I mean, so you need to make a mistake and learn by it, I feel. Although you hope the mistake isn't that drastic, but sometimes it will be. But when you're around people, you can only kind of learn how to behave when you maybe misstep a little, and then you realise that you've done that, and then you learn how not to do that again within your comfort.
See what I mean? You never actually know someone until you step into their shoes.
When you talk about this theory of mind, you described it as something that goes both ways. You described it as something that, how does somebody know exactly how somebody else is reacting and feeling in a situation when they're not the same as the other person? So often theory of mind is described as a lack in autistic people because autistic people do not have the same feelings and thoughts from the same situation and stimulus that a non-autistic person might. So it's seen as a lack within the autistic person because they don't do it the same as everyone else.
But it's not a lack, and that's where education needs to play a role in here. It's not a lack. Maybe the autistic person's just really sensitive to the environment around them or something, and they have problems concentrating because they're overwhelmed or something.
So when you use the word theory of mind, often it reminds people of how they have been criticised in the past for not being the same as everyone else and not seeing things from everyone else's point of view.
You know something, that's news to me, so if that really is the case, then I think that needs to be adjusted as well.
Well, the way you described it is in a two-way street. You described it like a double empathy problem. But the way it's often used is a simple lack in the autistic person, that they don't have the same reactions to a situation that a non-autistic person, and they call that lack of theory of mind, not being able to see into somebody else's head. But it's happening both ways. Yes,
well, maybe the wider community need to stop seeing it as a lack and start seeing it as a double empathy problem.
I see Morris has a comment. He says that everyone's sensitivities and traumas are equal.
Exactly.
Often you meet autists with empathy failure, that they think their traumas matters and yours don't.
But in truth, everyone's traumas matter. And, I think traumas should be... You should feel encouraged to share your traumas with people so that they can adjust and meet your needs. And you never know, you might meet an individual who's been through the same kind of trauma that you've been through, in which case they can sympathize and they can perhaps advise you on what to do.
Well, that's true. I mean, the thing that's done me a lot of good over the years, I was diagnosed when I was 17, I'm 42 now, is when I've met people with autism, not just with autism, but met other people that have shared the same experience, the really bad experience of not so good experience, and they share it and they can identify it in a certain way, and it certainly helps you not overcome it, but cope with it, and not to dwell on it so much. But it depends obviously what that trauma is, but it certainly has helped when you speak to others.
I think if we go back to Morris, Morris says,
yeah.
What are your feelings on that, Nath? Morris says everyone's sensitivities and traumas are equal.
Mm-hmm.
Often you meet other autistic people who display an empathy failure, that they think that their traumas matters and your trauma might not matter. So it's a concentration on their own sensitivities, like you described the person who was shouting at the door being open and closed because they suddenly had enough.
I agree, everyone's sensitivities and traumas do matter, definitely. We should all feel encouraged to share our traumas with each other, but we just have to be mindful on how we do it, because I know some people just lash out and offend other people without intending to, And, that's not the way to express yourself, because it just causes upset.
When we first started our conversation, you were talking about the public being educated about autism to enable a better rounded view of the world, so
Definitely.
that they can perceive somebody else's need or somebody else's difference and accept it as a normal part of life.
Yes, just accept the individual as they are.
Right. But on the other side of things, we as autistic people have to work to try and understand the rest of the world around us equally, don't we? We have to look at the non-autistic world and try and understand where they're coming from.
No, definitely. Definitely.
And that also works within our own community as well. From what Morris is saying, he's saying that there appear to be failures sometimes to recognise that we are not all the same within our own communities, and one person's trauma is irrelevant to another person. But we need to have some kind of understanding of each other's traumas.
Yes,
and not
we
police
do.
them. Yeah.
Yes, because, I think, because, I have traumas as well, and I get triggered in certain circumstances, but I know that if I lash out, that's not fair on other people's parts, because, they don't know the trouble I've been through necessarily. And so, it's not fair that they should pay for anyone else's failures or anything. So I think it's a case along those lines of learning how to deal with your traumas in in certain ways. And I think that's one of the reasons why I have counselling. And counselling has taught me a lot about myself and why I've ended up being the person I am today. Can I just say also, you probably haven't noticed, but I wear a headband. It says Autism Forever in Welsh and English, and that's another means, I would say, of advocating, because people will notice it, hopefully.
So because you wear a headband that shows that you have an openness about your autism, it's a signifier that people could talk to you about it, but also it's a positive image and positive symbol that goes with it. Is that what you're saying?
I would say so, yes. I'm not saying that it's the best in the world, because no one's perfect, but, I do it just because I can, and I'm happy to do it.
Well, I wear a much smaller, subtler thing. I wear an Autistic Radio pin badge that sometimes causes a little bit of conversation on a train. I don't think I would wear necessarily something quite so bold as you are, but, in your area, that seems fine for you. Everyone has to make their own decisions.
Exactly. I would never expect other people to be like myself.
What you're aiming for is a bit of equality and understanding.
Exactly.
Amongst ourselves and out to the wider public.
The whole world.
Okay, that's a beautiful thought. And you're also saying that small steps in the right direction are important.
Well, I like a Shakespearean quote which goes, "To climb steep hills requires slow pace first."
Very nice. When I heard that you were going to come and talk with us on the radio station today, Nath, I did not know what you were going to speak about. I thought maybe you'd be speaking about your work in music. I thought you might be speaking about the difference in Wales. You're a Welsh speaker, I think, as well.
Yes, I am.
Yeah. And what I ended up with after this conversation is something extremely nice, extremely gentle. You're saying very positive things, and it seems to me that you're advocating just by being you. Your advocacy is going through the world and doing the right thing as far as you can tell and as far as you can see, educating yourself and then kind of gently educating others with little bits and bobs. That seems like a lovely thing that you're doing there, and the more that we do these little things, the better. I think you're a good example to us all, mate.
Thanks. what I'm always saying on the radio or on television, which is that I don't think it's fair that, certain things should be celebrated for 1 week. There should be a Pride year every year, and there should be an autism awareness year all round, a depression year all round. And I think that would be another way of promoting equality.
Well, it seems to me that you're doing that yourself. What you're doing is you're making it awareness year for autism just by being you, and you're making a disability awareness just by being you. So what you're saying is you're bringing constant awareness to your life.
I'm trying my best. One can only do one's best.